red lights, you know, drive through red lights with his very first car. He would drive through a red light with us in the car, sort of like a dare type thing, and I'd have to pray for him to stop. Prince, please let me out of the car, please. Can you please, man, just let me out right on the corner. I don't care, man, I don't. And he would just look at me like he had some kind of magic, I swear to God, like he knew that no cars were gonna hit him when we went through this red light. And I didn't like that, though. That was too much for me. I was like, hey, okay, I can go along with the mythology, hey, but this is like, you know, so that's the kind of guy he was.
Because he sang in a falsetto voice, I don't think that he had fully gained the confidence of the acceptance of that kind of a voice. And so he would tend to sing very quietly. And I remember I was always in the control room. I didn't have the world's best equipment. And I was shoving all the faders all the way up and trying to get us, you know, turning everything up I could and having him move closer to the mic and trying to get a little more volume so that I could see some needle fluctuations on the VU meters. And I was just not getting enough level. It was really an equipment deficiency more than anything else. And so I had to get Prince to sing louder. And so one of the ideas that I tried, I said, look, we're gonna scratch the approach we've been doing. We're gonna try something new here. So I laid pillows down on the floor in the studio, and I had him lay down, and I put the microphone virtually in his mouth, and then we turned off all the lights. And I said, now I'm just gonna leave you laying there for a little while just to kind of get relaxed. And we put some headphones on him. And there I am in the control room, pitch black, you know, with this match, trying to find out where the right buttons are. And there's Prince out there somewhere, laying down on the floor with this microphone in his mouth. And I start rolling the tape, and all of a sudden, I get a louder voice. And I think, this is it. I've found the magic.
Prince really conjured the whole Purple Rain mythology, I think, in order for him to be able to survive and to break through. Because, in fact, Prince grew up in a Minneapolis where there were no creative outlets for his music. There were really no models for the kind of music he was drawn to make. He had to fashion it as he went along, and he, in the process, fashioned a whole world.
When Purple Rain was filmed, all the tourists came in. Is Prince there? I could have Sonny Ade or Neville Brothers on stage, and people, who the fuck cares? You know, I mean, they want to see Prince. Is he around? And you'd say, but look, this is the Neville Brothers. They're great.
It wasn't that he changed. It was the people around him that changed. And I think later on, because he could get anything he wanted from people, that it affected him. You know, whether it's good, whether it's bad, that's for who to say, who knows. You know, but I think that he started really feeding off of other people wanting to do things for him. You know, at first you would go, no, 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 man, I do that, I'll do it. But then, you know, when you get 10, 15, 20 people who want to do stuff for you all the time, then you go, oh, okay, okay. You know, and then it just gets to a point where he didn't have to do anything anymore but his music.
Prince came up at a time when the playlists on radio were as drastically segregated as they'd been any time since the early 60s. And he really played a vital role in spirit and in direct lineage in helping to break down those barriers. Michael Jackson and Thriller get most of the credit for breaking down the barriers that had sprouted up at radio. But I really think Prince and his whole kind of crossover project from Dirty Mind onward also had a great deal to do with that. I mean, he simply refused to admit of any kind of stylistic boundaries, and I think that had a really healthy effect on what was becoming a more and more segregated musical set of playlists at the time.
I remember there was always a very deep sense that he had to compete with Michael Jackson. That was his only competition, and that there was enough closeness in style that he had to peg out his own territory.
I believe that he had a lot of musical influences, but I believe that Prince was not the type of person to be influenced and sort of stuck emulating that kind of person. I believe that he was the kind of talent that could take a liking to a particular artist and take what they were doing to the next level.
Nobody who's been on the scene in the past 20 years recombines musical elements as freely and as creatively as Prince has at times. But at the same time, if you look at the really stellar musical careers of the 20th century, you find that there are sustained collaborative relationships that happen. With Duke Ellington, it's Billy Strayhorn. With James Brown, it's a series of sidemen who got less creative credit in his career than they really deserved, but they were there long term, and they really contributed a lot to his sound and his sensibility. The interesting thing about Prince, and in some ways the tragedy of Prince, is that he has never been able to sustain those relationships. He grew up isolated. He developed this vision of where he wanted to go and who he wanted to be, and he invented himself in that mold. And that attitude toward life and toward his career served him really well for a really long time. But at this juncture in his career, speaking in 1992, I wonder if he hasn't gotten to the point where he's beginning to run dry. He's beginning to lose his own self-critical faculties because he doesn't have stable relationships with other people who can afford to be honest with him and who can input ideas that he'll respect and work with.
But I think in the years to come, he will always be successful because that's the kind of songs he writes. He just doesn't write love songs. He writes songs about life, about real things, whether you like it or whether you don't, whether it's about incest or whether it's about God. You know, you either like it or you don't like it, but it's facts.
In my opinion, he should be looked at as the most significant artist of the 80s because he pumped in a phenomenal energy into this black music thing. He kind of fused rock and jazz and funk and pop together and made it into a thing that sounded really acceptable to everybody.
Prince will be looked upon, I think, in the same regard as a lot of the pioneers and the superstars from of the last 50 years, you know, with Presley and the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Little Richard. Prince will be in the top 10, if you will.
Even though he is recognized worldwide and his name is known by, you know, every household that exists today almost around the world, that people really don't understand him in total. And I feel that, I personally feel from seeing him do other things and knowing what Prince is capable of, that he is a modern-day Mozart or Beethoven, if you may, that his genius has yet to be discovered.
I named my dog after him. I had got a dog a guy gave me around the lake, it was Samoan Husky. I brought him home. It was a nice little old puppy, a nice little white puppy. And they used to I'd come in the door and Prince asked me, what's the dog's name? You know, he was on his way to rehearsal down in the basement. And I go, I didn't have a name for the dog because I just got him about 20 minutes ago. So I said, his name is Rinse. Yeah, that's his name. His name is Rinse. Prince without the P. And he said, oh, I like that.
I remember the first time I went to see Purple Rain. And I walked in and I sat down in this movie theater, packed with people. And here's Prince's head, 40 feet tall. And everybody's just saying, God, that's incredible. And to me, I saw that movie unlike anybody else in the world. Because to me, we were still in the studio working together and doing that thing. And what I saw on the screen was not this huge superstar, but I saw this kid that achieved his goal.
I think the only thing people worry about is that he might end up to be the Howard Hughes of rock and roll because he's got such a reclusive personality to begin with and does seem to genuinely like to be left alone and has always seemed driven in whatever he does and demands a lot of other people, but I don't think any more than what he demands of himself.
His career, it speaks for itself, really. I mean, what can I add to it? It's been a genius career. I mean, I don't know really, only thing I could think that he could do probably his next move is to come back and go like, man, why don't you guys come out to my pool, man? I got a pool full of beers. Come on, I got a basketball court at my house. Why don't you guys come on? Let's play some basketball, drink some brewskis, and watch the Bulls. That's all I think is left out of his whole thing, and him to be happy, because I don't think it'd be very much fun leaving all of it. Look at Pepe and all of us are still together. We communicate with Andre, all the old band members, Jesse, everybody still, talks to one another, and we need each other. And I think that's really, to be out there where he's at by himself's got to be pretty scary. So I feel for his future in that sense. Got to come back home. See? Because I talked to his mom and everybody, and it's deeper than just the music thing. You just got to come on home, man, And then I can see him going on and, be even doing things that David Bowie and people couldn't even dream of doing, or Hendrix. So